Still, larger bands of Indians used to make expensive huts upon some dominant mountain, much frequented by the sheep, such as Mount Grant and the Wasatch Range to the west of Walker Lake. On some particular spot, favorably situated with reference to the well-known trails of the sheep, they built a high-walled pole with long guiding wings diverging from the gateway, and into this enclosure they sometimes succeeded in driving the noble game. Great numbers of Indians were, of course, required. More instead, they could usually muster, counting in squaws, children, and all. They were all compelled, therefore, to build rows of dummy hunters out of stone along the ridge tops which they wished to prevent the sheep from crossing, and without discrediting the simplicity of the game, these dummies were found effective, for with a few live Indians moving about excitedly among them, they could hardly be distinguished at a little distance from men by any one not in the secret. The whole ridge top then seemed to be alive with hunters. The only animal that may fairly be regarded as a companion or rival of the sheep is the so-called Rocky Mountain goat, which, as its name indicates, is more antelope than goat. He then too is a brave and hardy climber, fearlessly crossing the wildest summits and braving the severest storms, but he is shaggy, short-legged, and much less dignified in demeanor than the sheep. His jet black horns are only about 5 or 6 inches in length, and the long white hair which is covered obscures the expression of his limbs. I have never yet seen a single specimen in the Sierra, though possibly a few flocks may have lived on Mount Shasta a comparatively short time ago. The ranges of these two mountaineers are pretty distinct, and they see but little of each other. The sheep have been restricted mostly to dry inland mountains, the goat or chamois to the wet, snowy, glacier-laden mountains of the northwest coast of the continent in Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska. Probably more than 200 dwell on their icy volcanic cone of Mount Rainier. And while I was exploring the glaciers of Alaska, I saw flocks of these admirable mountaineers nearly every day, and often to their trail followed the mazes of bewildering crevices, in which they are excellent guides. 3 species of deer are found in California: the black-tailed, the white-tailed, and mule deer. The first mentioned is by far the most abundant, and occasionally meets the sheep during the summer of the high glacier meadows and along the edge of the timberline, but being a horse animal seeking shelter and rearing its young in dense thickets, it seldom visits the wild sheep to the higher home. The antelope, though not the mountaineer, is occasionally met in winter by the sheep while feeding along the edges of the sage plains and bare volcanic hills to the east of the Sierra. So also is the mule deer, which is almost restricted in its range to the eastern region. The white-tailed species belongs to the coast ranges. Perhaps no wild animal in the world is without enemies, but Highlanders, as a class, have fewer than lowlanders. The wily panther, slipping and crouching among long grasses and bushes, pounces upon the antelope and deer, but seldom crosses the bold, craggy thresholds of the sheep. Neither can the bears be regarded as enemies, for though they seek to vary their everyday diet of nuts and berries, by an occasional meal of mutton. They prefer to hunt tame and helpless flocks. Eagles and coyotes, no doubt, capture an unprotected lamb at times, or some unfortunate beset in deep, soft snow. But these cases are little more than accidents. So also a few perish in long continued snowstorms, though in all my mountaineering I have not found more than 5 or 6 that have seemed to have met their fate this way. A little band of 3 were discovered snowbound in Bloody Canyon a few years ago, and were killed with an axe by mountaineers who chanced to be crossing the range in winter. Man is the most dangerous enemy of all, but even from him our brave mountain dwellers have little to fear in the remote solitudes of the High Sierra. The golden plains of the Sacramento and San Joaquin were lately thronged with bands of elk and antelope, but being fertile and accessible, they were required for human pastures. So, also, are many of the feeding grounds of the deer, hill, valley, forest, and meadow. But it will be long before man will take to the highland castles of the sheep. And when we consider here how rapidly entire species of noble animals such as elk, moose, and buffalo are being pushed to the very edge of extinction, all lovers of wilderness will rejoice with me in the rocky security of Ovis Montana, the bravest of all the Sierra mountaineers.